Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, this is going to be a great episode. If you love music like I do, if you love podcasting like I do, make sure you get a pen and paper out because you're going to be enjoying this. People always ask me, why am I always so pumped up? Because I'm drinking this new coffee I just came out with, twice the amount of caffeine of any coffee. So if you like caffeine with a kick, definitely check out Vertical Momentum Coffee. And all the proceeds go to help veterans struggling with PTSD and homelessness. So it's kicking ass with a mission. So guys, if you love podcasting, you love music, this is your episode. Brother, what is going on, Christian? How are you?
Richard, I'm doing fine today. How about yourself? By the way, that was one hell of an opening. And hey, anything we can do to help our vets, I am in for. While I was never in the service, my dad was for most of his life, and so I greatly respect what you guys do, and anything we can do to help the cause we're in for.
I love it. Now, you're a California kid.
I am.
So what were you like growing up? What kind of kid were you? And what was the music scene when you were growing up?
Well, who's to say I've ever grown up? I think that's the trick. I think that's the story of my life is how to figure out how not to grow up when you get right down to it, and run away and join the circus. And certainly music when I was a kid was the avenue to do exactly that. So I've kind of kept it up throughout my life. But that's a great question. What was I like when I was a kid? Oh man, maybe it'd be best if you asked other people that. But I've always been curious. I've always been a studier of some sort. I wouldn't say I was great in school, but I was very interested in learning about everything. I just happened to do it on my own. In fact, I proudly call myself an autodidact. I've learned quite a bit about a lot of different things. Maybe a mile wide and an inch deep, and some subjects more than an inch, definitely. But I'm interested in the world that we live in. I'm interested in the times. I keep up on the news. I keep up on geopolitics. Keep up on the culture. Keep up on entertainment, sports. You name it. I just was interested. I call my original podcast Rock and Roll Archaeology because I've always had a love for archaeology, and fancied myself an Egyptologist when I was a kid, and wanted to do that for a period of time. Until I discovered girls, that was. I guess the other thing about me is I was a born performer. So I'm a bit of a ham and have been since I was a kid. I just enjoy all aspects of that, whether it's singing, dancing, plays, theater, film, television. Doesn't matter. To me, it's all the same thing. And I think that's why I do what I do, is because all of that is about storytelling. And if I can go deep for a moment, if you strip back, let's say we do destroy ourselves, and some alien race comes down and finds the leftovers and says, what is it about these people? What happened? Yeah, where did they come from, and what did they do? And I think the distillation will be that there are three really important moments. They all occurred about 50,000 years ago, and that was the capture of fire, the invention of the wheel, and the creation of storytelling. Those are the three things that we'll be known for if we ever leave the scene and somebody picks up the pieces and wonders what we were all about.
And I love that. Now, like I'm a big music guy. I love listening to artists that they tell stories.
Yeah.
Like one of my first albums. Yes, I'm an old fart. One of my albums that I first bought was Kiss Double Platinum. And when it
Double
goes,
Live, the first Double Live album, that's a big one.
And I'm listening to when they had the whole car crash and everything. It was a story. And as I get older, like we were talking earlier, I love the Beatles. I mean, not Beatles. I mean, I love the Eagles. And then, like, for me, I like some country, and I love Travis Tritt's music because he tells stories.
Oh,
Garth
country is, you have to tell a
story.
story in country. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, just
yeah,
can't listen to music just to listen to music. It has to. I'm a lyric guy. I'm
yeah.
lyric first. Everything
Oh,
else.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a little unusual. Most people, they get into the beat and the hook, the melody, and then they listen to the lyrics if they let it spin enough times.
So, what kind of music? And because now, was he said you were Southern California growing up?
Yeah, yeah. I was born and raised in LA, lived there until 1993, and came north to chase the tech gold rush. I've lived in the San Francisco Bay Area since.
So, in the early 80s, 1983, 82 is when Rat and Motley Crue, and that's when the whole scene started.
Yeah.
That started there. But then, like you said, 90, but the Bay Area, they had some great out. Journey came out of the Bay Area. So California is a music hotbed. It's always been that way, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, let's face it, the entertainment capital of the world is Hollywood. And, out of that, it's no surprise that the center of pop music, at least, has resided in Southern California, certainly since the mid 60s, if not before. It's where the greatest concentration of studios, high end studios, and the production people that you're needed to run it, and the studio musicians that are there. And I think only Nashville, would be second. Some people may say, well, what about New York? And that's true. But I think over the decades, New York, has waned as far as an entertainment center other than theater. And most music is still made in Southern California and or Nashville.
And like for me, one of my first influences was Hendrix, of course.
Mm.
And the first guitar, the second guitar I ever bought, and I hardly ever play it, but it's a white Fender Strat. Just because he had one, I had that Strat. So, who were some of the people that you listened to that you started picking up music and started picking up a guitar when you were a kid?
Great question. I would say, first of all, I've always been interested in music, and I recognized very early on that not only was it something outward like a band, or like the Beatles or Elvis or anybody else on the radio, but it was also instrumental in all other aspects of entertainment. I very quickly picked up that if you don't have music in a movie, the movie sucks. So I kind of internalized it through a lot of that. I started off, acting in, school and all through high school. And so was always interested in just being a performer or a ham. But I realized that in my early teens that musicians seemed to get a lot of girls. And when girls became important, music became even more important to me. I luckily had some older siblings and an aunt, especially. I'll call out my Aunt Lily, who gave me a stereo when I was about 12, along with a bunch of 45s and a few albums. And the 45 that I remember the most was Horse with No Name, because I'd play that over and over and over again. And I could sing it. And the other was the Beatles' greatest hits, the Blue and Red albums. And having those, boy, for anybody, if you want a foundation in pop music of the last 70 or so years, start with the Beatles. You can't go wrong there. From there, I started to, begin to pick up my own choices. I was a big David Bowie fan early on.
Ziggy,
Ended up Ziggy
Ziggy.
Stardust and and all that. And then Pink Floyd. I remember being sat down when I was about 15 or 16 with some older kids going, if you've never listened to Dark Side of the Moon, here we're gonna put you in a room, we're gonna put it on, and you don't move for 40 minutes. You listen to this whole thing, and walked out going, oh my God, I think I just was told what the stages of life are about here. You want to talk about storytelling? There, Pink Floyd definitely is up there, and then around that same time, we moved around a lot, and I'm sure you're aware of that, being on the military side. Sometimes that happens, and I think it was like my third or fourth high school. I walked in on the first day, and some kid walked up to me and said, "Hey, you're the new kid. What do you do?" It was literally the first question he asked. What do you do? And I was like, what do I do? Oh, I sing music. I sing rock and roll. And he goes, oh, I know a band that's looking for a singer. So by lunchtime, I had met some guys. By that afternoon, I was fake singing, I might call it at the time. I sure looked like I knew what I was doing, but I had to learn the craft. But I was doing it that day, and I've been doing it ever since.
Okay, now for me, like I said, I love music, and some of the biggest bands, like they're like Kiss. They had 4 members, but each member had a story behind them.
Character, yeah, fully developed. Right.
Like certain people would follow Peter Criss. Even the Beatles. Everybody.
The Cat, the Starman, the Demon, and what was Ace? Ace was the Spaceman.
Yep, the Spaceman.
So Starman and Spaceman. I couldn't get them straight. I got the idea, but
then you get the Beatles, and each of them had their own fan base, and they told stories. So
that's a great point.
But like there's certain bands most of the people you could even, if I said to the average Joe, who is one of the members of the Doobie Brothers? No clue. No, a lot of people have no clue how many members.
Pat Simmons, Tom Johnson, don't just jump out. Is that what you're saying?
Because a lot of bands, even like, the Eagles, of course, they had Glenn Frey, and but a lot of them have big artists, big songs and big albums, but they don't really know who they are. You know what I mean?
That's a different tack to take. There's I like to think about it in terms of like the English tradition of music and the American tradition of music come at it from 2 different angles. The Americans tend to want some sort of authenticity. Like, they're really, really, what they're telling you is really, really what they believe. And hence they think in the let the music speak for itself. And there's where you get your nameless, faceless bands, if you will. And of course, that all ends with MTV. But back before that, where on the English tradition, they understood that this was theater. This was entertainment, and so they threw more at it. And of course, some Americans picked up on that. I would point to Alice Cooper being an early one that really realized that there was a huge theatrical experience to this. Now, remember, Alice Cooper's band, the actual Alice Cooper band, they loved that English music. They loved the Yardbirds and all of those 60s English bands, and then came to LA and became freaks and followed that. And so it's a natural progression for them to really go down the theatrical road. And out of them comes Kiss and as many of these others that recognize that it's more than just the music. It's about sight and sound.
Well, like for me, the first album, one of the first albums I ever bought was the Kiss Double Platinum, but I also bought Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, just because the album looked amazing. And back then, for me, when I would buy an album, I would actually, or a cassette, uh, I would actually read all the lyrics. And in some of the old stuff, like I bought an old Molly Hatchet album just because it looked ass kicking. You know, the cover
I
was
know which one you're talking about with the Frank Frazetta cover, right?
exactly. But you know, for me, like I said, I'm a lyric guy, so it was amazing when like I would be able to buy like "Shout at the Devil" and be able to actually read the lyrics. You know what I mean?
Well, I get you there, but I tend to read a little bit more Bob Dylan's lyrics than maybe Kiss or Motley Crue there. But you know, you mentioned country. There again, you know, lyrically, those guys got it going on. They know how to tell a tale and turn a phrase. Maybe give a double entendre. You know, that makes you think. You know, and I really enjoy that when I get down to it. Now, hey, look, can I put a Motley Crue song on and, you know, get in my car and drive, you know, 100 miles an hour? Oh, hell yeah. You know, Kickstart My Heart will do that every time. You know, so it's, to me, it's like, you know, what mood am I in? Or what situation am I in? And what's a good bit of music for that?
Well, there's certain music. I mean, certain bands. I think they go across all genres. Like the Eagles, they can be in a country genre. You know,
Yeah.
they can be
Yeah.
hard rock because you know Joe can actually shred. I mean, he's
Yeah.
an amazing
Well,
guitar player.
The Eagles did come out of, they came out of that early 70s troubadour where country was being influenced in with softer rock. You know, right then you have, you know, the Ladies of the Can, you have Joni Mitchell and Carole King and Linda Ronstadt kind of getting going here, James Taylor and things like that. Those guys were all hanging out together. And the you know, Glenn Fry and Don Henley were in that crew. So it's no surprise that they kind of looked at you know, and I'm not talking traditional country. I'm talking about the like the First National Band, the Burrito Brothers, who they got their influences from, like the outlaw country guys, you know, like Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, you know, maybe the boogie woogie stuff coming out of Bakersfield, Buck Owens, and stuff like that. And they infused that with a backbeat, which, you know, Nashville wasn't doing exactly at the time. But now it's funny when I listen to country, you know, you can hear a lot of classic rock in it these days. So they kind of came at it from one edge, and now they are the accepted pathway for current Nashville acts.
Now, I'm a big James Taylor guy, so anytime I hear his voice, I got to keep the song on, no matter
Yeah.
what.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so now when you first said, "Okay, I'm a singer," you know, you had to start learning lyrics. You had to start listening to music, and as with an ear. I mean,
Yeah.
you had to. You couldn't just mime them. You had to learn the music. So, what was that like, having to learn different songs and different albums and music?
Wow, great question, Richard. So as I said, you know, I wasn't born with a singer's voice, which sucked because my dad was. I literally had to struggle and work at it and take lessons and learn placement, you know. And you know, by the time I got into my 20s, you know, I was pro, but I had to work at it. But the showmanship side of things, I never had to work on that. I just have a natural ability to stand on stage and engage people and have fun and be in the moment, sort of thing. But the first thing that I decided when I was young was that I kind of preferred the emotional singers over the technical singers. And maybe that's because I couldn't be the technical singer. So I kind of went for the, you know, the Peter Gabriel guys, the rough and ready voices, the Dwayne Allman, Greg Allman, for example, or things like that. Alice Cooper, you know, I really enjoyed him as opposed to like Dio, you know. So I kind of felt that And again, this goes with the storytelling side of things. I felt that the job of the singer was to, especially, to internalize the lyrics and provide an emotional response to them, and try to captivate that and get people to understand those lyrics without actually paying attention to them at first, knowing that most people listen for the beat, and then the hook, and then the melody, and then the lyrics. And so, if I could instill an interpretation emotionally for those lyrics, whether I was singing somebody else's songs or my own, I thought that was the primary job for me, and what I could get away with as I developed as a singer.
Now, I went to a lot of concerts, and some of the greatest concerts I ever been to was, BB King, just sitting there with
One note, man. Yeah.
with Lucille, but he made you feel every note. He made you feel every word. He made you feel the pain. I seen Travis Tritt. He played for 2 hours, just him and his acoustic guitar. And then I seen Yngwie Malmsteen, and I was like 10 minutes, and I'm like, I'm ready to go home. I'm bored. It's like, because I didn't get any emotion out of it. And I think, like, for me, I hate going to a concert and the singer just stands there, doesn't move. And you're like, oh my God, I paid $100 for this.
I could sit home and listen to the song, or it depends on what the experience is. Hey, I'm a big fan of the Grateful Dead. I've seen them a million times. But do I go to see the Dead? No, I go to see the crowd and listen to the music. And, I don't care if I'm in the front row. It makes no difference. In fact, that's a waste of money. I'd rather be on the grass, twirling around with all the other deadheads out there. So, to each their own, but, provide me with an experience, I think, is your point. And, I think the better acts figure out a way to make that happen if they're not exactly the most exuberant or compelling, face to look at or body to watch.
Or now, because, and we know you already told me which side you go politically, but we're not going to. But I think personally, if I'm going to a concert, I want to hear your political views, whether either way.
Yeah.
Tell me music. I don't want a 45-minute banner on this political climate, because I can stay home and watch CNN. I don't need to be paying $100 a ticket for you to tell me how bad I am. You know what I mean?
I hear you, but at the same time, I think art is, a early indicator of, societies. It's a mirror to society of what's going on, and artists, I think, have a responsibility to say what's going on. The greatest artists of our existence, and I'm talking, Shakespeare, Maya Angelou, or anybody, Homer, while he was telling a tale of history, as mythologized as it was, because when Homer was performing the Odyssey and the Iliad, which were performances, he didn't write this down and say, here you go, here's my book. These were poets that would go from town to town, and they would give this like a theater production. And so, at the same time, they're making political statements. Now, the coolest of us are the ones that do it without being overt, that do it through metaphor or analogy, that just tell the story and the point gets made. I agree with you. Those who stand up and say, screw this or screw that, anybody could do that, but if you can put a crafty in the song and make me think about it for a while, that might change some minds, if not immediately, over the long haul. So I think it depends on how it's presented. Now again, if I were the Dixie Chicks and I got canceled, like I did in 2003, I'd stand up every night going, fuck you, and here's why I feel differently and why I shouldn't be, sort of thing, because they're in the moment of it and they're being attacked. But to just wake up one day and say, I don't like this or I don't like that. If you can put it in a compelling art form, great. That's fantastic, and entertain me at the same time. That's the way it should be out there. Make the best art makes you think, and makes you think for a long time.
And for me, like I'm a big I love going back in music, and seeing where people, there's certain bands, and then you're like, well, who are their influences?
Yeah.
Who are their influences? Like I
Mhm.
like to learn about, the MC5, the Iggy Pop, where they came from, the Stooges. But if somebody, again, in the world that we live in today, came out with a song on the radio called "Only Women Bleed," I'm sure that they would be, or Sweet 16, like Kiss came out talking about an 80-year-old man hitting on a 60.
It's a little problematic these days, a little cringy, but again, I will say, look, Michael Jackson's a perfect example, and I get in this argument all the time. I personally think that you can separate the art from the artist, and I use my favorite Baroque painter, Caravaggio, to explain that. I mean, there's no doubt, there's not a person in the world who can't look at a Caravaggio and go, "My God, that guy's a master," and it should be displayed, and this is beautiful. He killed people with swords. Okay. So, he was a dick. But it doesn't matter that his art, I can have those two thoughts simultaneously in my head. He was a dick, but boy, could that guy paint. And I can feel the same way about some other problematic artists. I don't believe anybody should be canceled. If you don't like something, then just don't listen to it. You can always turn the channel off, or not buy their product. And that's a form of voting, by who you support. And so everybody should be allowed to say what they want to say. And then it's up to you on whether you accept it or not. Now, of course, if they say it and it's a real problem, then there's a backlash to it. And, that's the price you pay for having free speech. I mean, you get to say it, but you don't get to control the reaction. If people want to go, fuck you, well, then, maybe you shouldn't have said it, sort of thing. And maybe you should take that lesson in the future.
Now, I'm a big freedom of speech guy. I believe everybody's got a freedom of speech. Just
everybody's got a freedom of speech. They just don't have a freedom to the reaction.
Yeah, and like I said, I have friends that got killed over in Afghanistan and Iraq defending, our rights.
Our democracy, our republic, our First Amendment. Yes.
Like I can't stand Sinead O'Connor. I'm not a big fan.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, she's been canceled ever since Saturday Night Live. If she ever tries to put on a show, people are still going to show up booing her just for ripping up a picture of the Pope.
If I could defend Sinead just for a minute, and look, I think she's got a fantastic voice. She had one big hit. Thank you, Prince. And so I respect her as an artist, and she's been around for time to tell. But at the same time, I might suggest that her political issue was not really an American one. It was very much an Irish one. And the Irish and the Catholics and the Anglicans were still in the troubles at the time of her performance. And so I didn't internalize it of like, oh, there's she's tearing up the Vicar of Christ, and that hurts my American sensibilities as a Catholic or what have you. I quickly realized that she was making a political statement about her home country of Ireland and its issues, and, was it crude? Yes. What could she have done it with more clever? Yes.
Like Marilyn Manson, same thing. You can kind of but it's shock. Shock will pay. Unfortunately, pays. People are not going to, like you said, oh, what did Marilyn say? Well, we're going to go see what Marilyn. Now, one thing, let's talk is I'm
Oh,
a big,
if I could on the Marilyn Manson
yeah,
thing. So I know he's in some problems with some women and things like that, and deservedly so. Don't get me wrong. There's no need to do that kind of shit. You know, if your partner's not agreeing to it. Okay, so but the fact is that you know this inability. And this goes in a lot of things that I'm seeing today. You know, with like the Q stuff, and it's just you know there's this inability to recognize that this is a performance. This is a theater piece. It's not to be taken seriously as like this is real life, you know. And then you get off stage and you do your a different world. And while it's sometimes complicated for the artist, Alice Cooper's a perfect example of that. I mean, he let the character of Alice take over his life
yeah.
until he finally realized, I got to stop or die. And he was able to separate those two things. He shows up to the theater, he puts on the leather and the cod piece, puts on the makeup, goes out and bees that Alice Cooper for 2 hours, and then comes home, takes the makeup off, and goes and plays golf. So he's got it down. And everybody recognizes now that this Alice Cooper thing, it's a show. It's not to be taken seriously. It's to have fun, and you can have some thoughts. Like, you know, horror does you know, some great things to make people consider, you know, look at life differently, but put yourself in other people's shoes or what have you. So it's the same sort of thing, but we've fallen into this world now where it's like almost impossible for people to separate, you know, theater from reality. And then it's getting to be infused even in our politics, which is like, that's not so. Nobody needs to do that. You know, it's really easy to figure out when somebody's full of shit and they're performative versus when they actually have beliefs and are trying to do the right thing.
And I love that. And thank you. Like I said, I'm enjoying this conversation so much. I just want to say thank you. You know, I read an interview.
Well, I'm always unfiltered, so you know you're gonna get how I feel, and I'm not saying everybody needs to feel like I do. I believe, in fact, that's the beauty of it, is that everybody is an individual and they get to. But you know, at the same time, we sometimes get influenced by others, and we change our thinking, modify our behaviors to become better people.
like I read an interview with Alice Cooper, and he says, you know, at 12 o'clock midnight, I'm on stage as Alice. 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm sitting in an AA meeting saying, hi, I'm Vincent.
He's Vince Furione. Yeah.
Like, we're two different people. But he's like,
Yeah.
because you don't expect the guy that plays Freddy on the show, in the movies, to actually be Freddy 24 hours a day.
Yeah, and that's ridiculous, you know. You know, we need to understand that. And personally, I think that if we did, we'd have less of these famous people go down bad holes that lead to, you know, irresponsible behavior.
Now, you've been in the music industry, you're pretty much your whole life, and you know the downsides. Did you ever get trapped up in any of it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I had a pretty significant cocaine habit in my 20s. You know, I smoked cigarettes, but I'm lucky in that I don't believe I have the addiction gene. So I was able to wean myself off of whatever drug I, you know, got in trouble with on my own with very little help. And I know that's not for everybody. And in fact, that's kind of a little different. And I thank the gods for that luck that I had. And I'm not surprised. I look at my parents, and neither one of them were really much drinkers or druggers or any of that. So I think it's just part of the DNA that I inherited out here. But I did. I got into some trouble with mostly with drugs, and that led to, bad choices with members of the band, or with various women that were around at that time. Not that I did anything even remotely that I would feel ashamed about, other than just being a dick, or screwing somebody else's girlfriend in the band, things like that, which, low level shit when you get down to it, especially at that time.
But now, I got to meet a lot of musicians. I got to do security for Joan Jett, and I actually got to hang out.
I've met Joan several times. Yeah.
And I think there is such thing as lead singer's disease.
Yes, I gladly will take some of that on myself. I try to moderate it as best as possible, but yeah.
I found myself, whenever I hung out with a band, I usually gravitate toward the bass player or the drummer, because they're a little bit more laid back and chill. It's usually the guitarist and the lead singer that are always having issues, whether with each other or just in general.
Well, yeah, and that's because the guitar player and the lead singer are the stars, when you get right down to it, of any rock band, right? And I mean, isn't it almost famous? It's like, hey, I was supposed to be the front man, and you're supposed to be the mysterious guitar player, sort of thing, a la Led Zeppelin. So yeah, what you do find that the bass player is usually the chillest of the band. It's certainly the case in my band. But hey, there's nobody who gets up on stage without an ego. I can tell you that. And then the drummers, actually, most of the drummers I've met have been animals.
Yeah.
the furthest from the human animal of the 4 or 5 positions that you find in a classic rock band. And then there's the keyboard player. They're usually the smartest ones of the band too.
And a lot of people don't realize, a lot of Van Halen's biggest hits were keyboard orientated, especially when they first.
Oh, Jump, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. People think, Eddie and it was guitar playing, but his piano and keyboard playing set a big backdrop.
Well, those brothers were classically trained, and hey, look, let's start with it. Eddie's guitar playing is still, head and shoulders above his keyboard playing. Yeah. He just, he wrote some good melodies, and let's face it, that early mid 80s, the keyboard becomes more prominent in pop music. You get synthesizers that are affordable and easy to use and learn. And so it's no surprise they got incorporated across the plethora of music.
And, like for me, like I said, I've always listened to voices, and I've always listened to lyrics, and a lot of people don't realize how, if you would take Michael Anthony's voices off a lot of the Van Halen songs, they'd have
yeah. Oh, no. Having that high harmony is quite crucial, especially when you're dealing with harder rock music, where the guitar frequencies really need that singer to sit on top. And Dave, didn't exactly have that kind of vocal style, but Michael Anthony did, and that created that magic.
Just like I listened, I had a friend of mine. He owned a studio here in New York City. I'm not going to mention it because I'm not about to get sued. But he let me go in when Bon Jovi they were recording Wanted, Dead or Alive.
Oh, geez. Oh, that's a big one. Slippery When Wet, right?
Yep. And if you take out Richie Sambora's vocals from that whole song, it sounds totally different.
Oh, of course.
But a lot of people don't realize what a great musician, Richie Sambora was, as far as guitar player. His solo album is one of my favorite albums of note all time. And most people don't even know he had a solo album out.
Well, unfortunately, it's more than just the ability to play and or write. There's a lot that goes into making, a rock star.
So, what made you now, want to start a podcast? Because there's 2.5 million podcasts out there. What
There
made
are.
you throw your hat in the ring and say, "All right, let's do this"?
Well, that's a long story. If you'll indulge me, I'll try to make it as concise as I can.
Uh,
But you know, I played music from the time I was 16 till I was 30, and thought that that was going to be my career path. Um, but I always had a backup plan. And whether that was going to school for a little bit, did go to film school for a couple of years, or having a day job. And my day job was in sales, which I also believe is a performative art. And so I started selling electronics. To start with, TV, stereos, big screens, stuff like that. And then that led into the tech business. I ended up, answering a want ad, and ended up on a desk selling the very, very earliest of tech in the early '80s. And so when the band kind of blew up, and there was one band, it was called Infrared, that I was in throughout most of my 20s, and we were together. Well, I should say we broke up anywhere from a day or two to 2 years in that 10 years period. And so I was in a couple of other bands in between, but the biggest band I was in was Infrared, and we headlined the Whiskey and the Roxy and the Trove and all that, and that was in the about 87, 88 to about 91 is when we were really hopping and playing down there quite a bit. But I always had this day job. And so I had turned 30. Nirvana had just come out. And I knew that the way the strip was dead, and I was pushing for a new direction. And my guys said, "No, we want to do this." And I said, "Have a nice day." And that was the end of that. And I decided to take my day job serious, and I got into tech, and I ended up in a 30-year tech career. And that's what got me to move to Silicon Valley up here. And what I did was, I've always been an entrepreneur. So I started after, I think, 94, 95, I started creating my own companies. And I pretty much had my own companies until 2003. And I sold the latest iteration to a larger organization. And I lived in a contract for a couple of years, and the company grew from, I had 25 employees, went to 1,300 into that company. And in 2014, it was 30,000 employees. And if you're an entrepreneur, the worst thing is to be in a giant organization where you're just a number and nobody's really paying attention to you. They just want you to shut up and do the work. And that's just not me. And so I left, and I said, do I want to just do this again, or do I want to do something different? And I was kind of bored, call it a midlife crisis. But I kind of said, I want to try my hand at something different. And podcasting had just started to become well known. It started in about 2004 with the iPod.
Yeah.
But it was really a hobbyist freebie sort of thing in the background until Serial came out in 2013. And with Serial, I listened to that and said, well, geez, I could do that. And I decided, I have a friend that I've known for 40 years. His name's Richard Evans. And I said to Richard, hey, I got a couple ideas for a podcast. One was political, one was about music, and I can't remember what the third one was. And we kind of distilled them both, and he said, I think we should do the music one. And I said, okay, well, we could kind of do sort of the same thing. And if you listen to Rock and Roll Archaeology, what it is it's a cultural music show. So we tell the chronological tale of music of the late 20th century, starting post-war, because that's where it all begins. American culture becomes dominant, and it's a democratized from the common man's perspective, and that was unusual. Most art is made for those who pay for it, and in the past, those who paid for it were rich, and hence you made the art for the rich. That's why you have opera and you have Baroque paintings and sculpture. You think the common man's paying for that? And by the way, do you think any of those statues are of the common man? No, they're the gods and the emperors and the rich people, right? Well, rock and roll is not. Rock and roll is about the common man's desires, wants, their issues, problems, most self-contained, and people like Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen. A lot of country is that way. And so we felt that we could do that. So we started this show 7 years ago. We're 22 episodes in. It takes us about 6 to 8 months to research, write, and produce each episode. And we put that out there. And of course, like you said, 2.5 million podcasts. It didn't become a giant success overnight. But by about 2018, we became the #1 music podcast out there for a summer. And we realized we really had something. And, because it took us so long to make these things, our fans would go, well, can't you do something in between? And my business partner, Peter Ferrioli, and I kind of strategized and said, yeah, we can do this and we can do that. And we did 6 original productions that then ended up creating a network. And the next thing we know, we had people emailing us saying, hey, can we be a part of your network? And lo and behold, here we are in 2022 with 90 plus music shows under the Pantheon Podcast Network.
And, I love Pantheon. Ever since we got connected, because there's some days I'm into one kind of music. Some days I'm into something else. And no matter where I go out on, Pantheon, I can find something for me.
Right. Well, that's the mission statement, is something for everybody. And we are music agnostics. We don't care what it is, as long as it's good. I like all kinds of music. I don't think there's a type of music that I don't like. There's definitely songs or artists I can say, not my cup of tea. But in any kind of genre, any kind of historical period, any kind of world music, I can usually find something to love.
See, I like your podcast. I really thoroughly enjoy it. I've listened to every episode. That. I've listened to every single episode.
Oh, thank you.
So if your numbers have gone up, it's because of me. But
it does pretty well. It does pretty well out there.
I'm the kind of guy that, I'll watch a documentary being made about a documentary about somebody making a documentary.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm with you. I could do that too.
Yeah. So I'm not a big Rush guy, but they put out a great documentary. And I think I've watched it 3 times.
On the lighted stage. Yeah.
And I don't even like the music, but it was just so riveting, the relationships that they had. And I think that's the thing about your show is it's kind of like a documentary where you get into it and you start caring about the people that you're talking about.
I'm glad you said that, Richard, because it was conceived as a proof of concept for a visual documentary. The 2 guys who love music and might be smart and be able to research and put something together are not going to knock on Hollywood's door and say, give me several millions of dollars to make this thing. But what we recognize is that we could do a proof of concept cheaply with the podcast and then sell it to be made into a visual documentary, and Rock and Roll Archaeology is being shopped for a 5-season, streamer type of documentary out there. The full telling of the history of, we call it rock and roll, but we think that historians will end up calling this the rock and roll age, and that includes all the music that was made from about 1954 to about 2003-ish.
Now, say 10 years ago, there was no such things as real as rockumentaries or documentaries. Like one of my
there was, but I mean, we are living in a golden age right now.
But like for me, one of my favorite rockumentaries, it was called The Story of Anvil, which was a Canadian band.
Yep, I remember them.
It was about their whole story, their whole backstory. And then people were like, wait a minute, let's do Behind the Music on VH1. And then it just became, well, Motley Crue made the Dirt album. And the Dirt movie. Now it seems like
that's a little bit more of a biopic, not exactly a documentary.
Every band, like even Elton John's got a biopic. It
yeah.
started to,
the Queen one was a giant hit, and so once Hollywood sees anything as a giant hit, they're going to duplicate that a million times.
So now talk about podcasting. If you would just start all over again, what are some of the lessons you've learned? Because doing what we do is not easy.
Yes. Well, it's not easy to sustain. That's the trick. Can anybody wake up one day and say, I'm going to make a podcast and go on to Amazon or Sweetwater and buy some equipment and learn how to, edit and upload a podcast? Sure. It's not that difficult. You grab some GarageBand. All the tools are pretty intuitive. They're, made for dummies. You should be able to get through. And if not, YouTube's there to help you find how to get to the next step as you go along. So anybody can do that. But to sustain a podcast, that's the hard part, and that's where the real creatives have to be a part of the process here. Most people put a podcast out, and to be honest with you, of that 2.5 million podcasts, I can guarantee you over 1 million of them are what we call pod faded. They have 5, 6, 7 episodes, and they realize, oh, Jesus Christ, this is fucking hard. And they quit, and they're just sitting there like ancient fossils that somebody can find. And every once in a while there's a winner out there. But the first thing that I did was I've always been a big fan of NPR ever since I was a kid. Yep. And as far as sonic quality, they're the gold standard. So the first thing is we try to get all of our shows up to an NPR like audio standard. So step one is make the audio as clean as you possibly can, because subconsciously if you don't, you will cause ear fatigue on your audience and they will not engage. They will get tired of that. The other thing is, do what have a take, be serious about the subject that you picked. And that's a lesson for any kind of work that you may really try to engage in. Maybe when you're a kid, it's hard to determine what it is your passion. Some people are born with that. They're the lucky ones, I think. And some of us have to kind of figure it out as we go along. But once you feel that or feel that you either are an expert or your take is to not be an expert and you're going to surround yourself with experts, you have something to wax on, because that's the key, is that again, you got to do this every week or every day or whatever it is that you're releasing this out. And don't be afraid to pivot to find success. The beautiful thing about data and analytics is you can engage with your audience, both in real time and through data, and figure out what they want and what's successful and what you're doing that is successful or not successful. and don't be afraid to fail, and learn from it. I think that's, the low barrier to entry of podcasting allows you to do that, especially early on. Your first 10 episodes, almost everybody gives you a break on and realizes that you're, getting your feet under you. And then it's just a question of maintaining that, schedule and trying to get it to the point where it's not a chore.
For me, now I think we have 500 episodes, I think, something like that. But for me, I found growth is when I started building relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Like we became friends. Now that we've talked, hopefully we're going to build a generational relationship, and hopefully I'm going to have your friends come on, and so forth. But I think a lot of people, when they start a podcast, I think, okay, I'm going to start it. It's on Amazon. I'm going to hit it and I'm going to get rich. And then they're looking at their numbers and there's like,
the world just doesn't work that way now, does it, Richard?
And they don't realize, you got to put in work. You have to put, I think a lot of people quit. I think if after 13 episodes, you're in like the top 10% or something like that.
Yeah.
But, people don't realize, you got to put in work. You got to graphics. You have to, like you said, get the right sound. You have to book people if you have an interview. And a lot of people don't realize you have to, it's hard to do it as a one-man group. And sometimes you have to build a team.
I'm very good at building teams. So, we've now have, like I said, 90 plus shows. We've got 140 people that are involved in the Pantheon Media family. For example, I was working on a theme song for a show that we just sold to Sirius XM. And I've got several composers in the family that I can go to and say, hey, let's work on this song. Let's get it to, we worked with the host to get their vibe, to get their, they weren't a music person at all. I mean, they love music, don't get me wrong, but they're not a musician. But we were able to work with them to get the feeling that they wanted as they opened their show. So, things like that. I've got producers that I can count on, writers that I can call. And so to your point, you want to surround yourself in some form of a community. Now, we did it by creating a vertical market in podcasting, which was unusual at the time. They're getting to become a little bit more prominent now, but that's single subject, music and music commentary, music education, music history, but it was all music. Whereas, most podcasting companies, we're all things to all people, focusing a lot on crime drama because that is the subject du jour and at the top of the charts. We didn't do that. We did not. We wanted to create a lane for ourselves in the belief that the future, which proved to be true, would be more specialized. And it works really well for us. I mean, the fact is that, we build podcasts for third parties, and who we knock on doors are people in our wheelhouse, which is the music industry and entertainment industry. And what's cool about that is that, a lot of businesses, but especially the entertainment industry, is extremely insulated. And so they like doing work with people that understand their culture. And, we've kind of set up a similar culture. So for us to knock on the door and say, hey, look, I focus on exactly what you do, as opposed to my competitor who's going to come in and go, I do all things for everybody. We're in a really neat position.
And one thing, like I said, before we even hopped on, is, being in the military, we had soundtracks to our deployments. Like the back to my deployments was, I guess we were talking earlier, going down range, we'd be playing Metallica or Megadeth or Slayer, or, even.
That's definitely the kind of music to have in an Abrams A1.
Or, we would be listening, in the barracks, so we're hanging out, partying, getting drunk, listening to DMX, Tupac, and stuff like that. And, even like I've been out now 12 years, and that music, that's when I was like 19, 20 years old. I hear a song and it just brings me back.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
well, music can do that to you, almost like, it's only music and smell seems to do that.
yeah,
You hear a song and yeah, it could take you back to being 18 years old, no problem. It's a really interesting art form. And it's probably why I gravitate to it more so than any other. As I like to tell people, they say that math is the language of the universe. Well, if that's the case, music is based on math, and therefore music is its voice. And so maybe there's something spiritual to music. And for a fact, I know there's something spiritual to music. And, I kind of gravitate to the spiritualism that does incorporate music into it. I personally, I think a world without music is devoid of life.
yeah.
Or any other organization that's not, at least feeling like that should be a part of it in some way or another. It's to me when I sing and play, number one, I'm doing it with other individuals in concert, which is, it's like, I tend to use like a sports analogy, when you're running on all cylinders as a team, let's just take, Tom Brady and his, many Super Bowl wins. When those Patriots or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the last year were just, in sync. That's what it's like when you're playing in a band and it's elevating. It's you mentioned that Elton John movie, and that moment at the Trove, which is, when he becomes a big deal in America, and he rises off the platform. Metaphorically, I've had that happen to me many times in front of an audience. There's just nothing like it. You four or five or so many people are just nailing it. You're not even in your head. You don't even think about it. It's just happening, and the energy of the crowd is drawing this whole symbiotic relationship back and forth. And to me, it's the closest thing to being a part of the universe or God or whatever it is that you want to spiritually obtain, or sex. Yeah, one of the two.
And, and I was a singer for a little while, and like you said, there's something about just getting in that pocket
Yeah,
where
yeah,
everything is it's just jamming right, and you're like, I wish this would never end.
exactly.
And then your guitarist breaks your string, and you're like, all right,
Yeah.
never mind.
Yeah. Nothing lasts for everything, it's all things in moderation at the same time. And, you can't know what it means to feel good if you haven't felt bad.
Yeah.
So, nothing, it's always for a moment, but that's what we live for, is those
And I
moments.
love the way you said, when you're driving in a car and a song will bring you back 30 years. Me and my wife were driving somewhere the other day, and that song Brother Louie came on, and we
Mm.
both sang in syncopation. And we're like, we haven't heard that song in 25 years,
Oh.
but it brought us back to when I was dating her when she was 16.
Hmm.
It just brought
Hmm.
us back. And I think, music, like you said, is so important. So
Well, if I can,
yeah.
look at Alzheimer's patients. Most famously, currently with Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga, he has severe Alzheimer's and has had it for several years now. But boy, you put a mic in that guy's hand and start that music up, and you wouldn't know the difference. You just wouldn't know. It's gotten to the point where he's so frail that he can't really do it anymore. But for the last several years, where he may not have been able to engage or communicate, in a speaking voice, he could still do it musically.
So now my last question is how do we find you? How do we find your channel? How do we support your mission?
So pantheonpodcasts.com is the web page for us to find ourselves. And I think Pantheon Podcasts on Facebook. I think it's Pantheon Pods on Instagram and Twitter. I know we have a new TikTok channel as well, although I haven't really played around on that. I got other folks that are doing that for us. If somebody wants to find me on Facebook, it's just Christian Swain, and I'll answer questions as best I can out there. So we're just out doing our thing and trying to provide as much good quality music content as the internet can handle. I will leave you with Pantheon Podcasts. Of course, that's on all the DSPs, the platforms, Apple, Spotify, Pandora. Doesn't matter. They were on all of them, so you can find it there. So we do two things that's kind of interesting. So we started with the Rock and Roll Archaeology feed, and we just started sticking shows in there because, again, our fans were saying, "Can you do something in between?" So we were kind of satiating them by giving these other shows, and then we got a few complaints from people going, why am I getting all these shows in here? And we trained them to think of it more like a magazine. And now we throw all of our shows into what we call the main feed, which is the Pantheon Podcast main feed. And you can get up to 4 or 5 shows a day. And you just got to think about it like a magazine. You read the headline, and if you want to read the article, then press play. And if you don't, then, move on to the next one, sort of thing. And now that's one of our top performing channels, and we get no complaints about it. People enjoy that. But all of our shows also have their own main feed. I mean, their own singular feed. So you can go and find something that you really dig and subscribe to that and support those guys as well on an individual level.
Brother, I'm so grateful that we actually got a chance to hang out and chat.
Oh, Richard, it was great. This was fantastic and really, really good questions. You actually made me think and have to go back in my memory and history to answer some of these. So I appreciate those.
Well, like I said, guys, I just want to say thank you to our sponsor, Vertical Momentum Coffee. What I'm going to do
Vertical Momentum Coffee. I got to get me some Vertical Momentum Coffee.
If somebody out there buys one of these, I will actually have you come on my show. I will interview you for your business, and I will promote it to up to 1.4 million people just for buying one bag of coffee.
That sounds like a pretty awesome deal, Richard. I didn't even have to buy a cup of coffee.
And all the proceeds go to help veterans struggling with homelessness and PTSD. So I don't make any money.
Much of that going on.
So I'm just paying it forward. So guys, if you like what we're talking about, leave a comment. Tell us what your favorite music is, and we're going to answer you back, and maybe put one of your comments on one of the upcoming shows. So make sure you smash the button, subscribe. That's the only way we ask for payment. This is all free. We don't get paid for this. So Christian, I just want to say, brother, I'm so grateful, and I'm very humbled and honored to call you friend now.
I feel the same way, Richard. You are a friend, and I thank you very much for this interview. It was a great time.
I love it, guys. And just like my theory is, like Oprah Winfrey says, if you want to help yourself, help other people. And that's what it's about. So, guys, remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up. I will catch you guys next week.